All right, so moving on to the perception of others. So we talked about the self. How do we perceive others now? And we'll also talk about theory of mind. So the perception of others as actions led a lot of researchers to discover what we now call mirror neurons. So um, there was a fascinating discovery that perceiving others as actions induced subthreshold motor activity in the adult observer. So this was the mirror neuron system by Rizzolatti and others in 2004. And there's a video where Rizzolatti talks about this discovery of mirror neurons, and it's quite fascinating. So let's watch a little bit here.
My interest was in describing the organization of the motor cortex from the point of view of the input coming into this region. So we studied how the monkey, the motor system, react when we present object. And our first discovery was that in the motor system, there are many neurons which fire when the monkey observes an object. Now these neurons are known as canonical neurons, because what they do, they are transforming the affordances present in an object in a way you can grasp it. For example, you have a small peanuts, you grasp like that, and it's enough to observe the peanuts that you immediately have already in your mind, in your brain, how to grasp it. This visual motor transformation is made immediately in a parietal lobe and premotor cortex. So we were studying this in a very ethological, I already mentioned it before, that contrary to most motor physiologists, we were using a very informal approach with the monkey. We were giving food to eat the monkey, we were looking how the monkey was grasping the food. So we were in a specific situation. And then we noticed that in some cases it was not enough to show an object to the monkey, but we have to grasp the object. So it should be object and the hand grasping it. And that was really unexpected because we found neurons which were firing when we did that. And the most interesting point was there was a clear congruence between our action and the action done by the monkey. So we are in the motor cortex, the monkey grasping this way, if the monkey sees myself grasping in the same way, there is a discharge. If I do something else, like pushing away or just waving, nothing happens. So we discovered neurons which respond to visual stimuli.
So that's remarkable, right? So they found, so they're recording in motor cortex, and what they found was that there were certain neurons that responded when the monkey picked up an object, and when they saw so for instance, they're trying to grasp like this can, right? And this is the right way to grasp the can. And certain neurons responded to that. So those were neurons that preferred that type of action. But what was spectacular was those same neurons also fired when the neuroscientist was performing that specific action. And so if they had held the can like this, for instance, those neurons would not fire, but they would only fire when they were held this way, because that was the preference for that neuron. Moreover, they fired when someone else was doing that same action. So that's the core concept of mirror neurons. So the same cells and circuits were involved both in generating the motion action and in processing the visual input that arises from someone else performing that same action. People thought that perhaps that was the fundamental that underlied empathy, for instance, right? So when you see someone performing a similar action and you find that in your brain there are certain reserve cells that respond to that, people thought that meant that perhaps that's how we empathize, and that to kind of whole. That's a whole lot of research is going into it. So there's lots of speculation and controversy about it, but it's a very hot and cool topic in social cognition, it turns out. Okay, which brings us to talk about the perception of others and how do we study that with fMRI. So I talked about some ways that was discovered with neurophysiology, but how about with fMRI? So there was a study that was performed in 2004. It was quite a seminal study, and it was as follows. So they presented participants in the scanner with faces, and they were paired with statements. So this face was paired with a statement: "At the party, he was the first to start dancing on the table." And then this face was paired with, "He refused to lend his extra blanket to the other campers." And they participants had to do two things. They had to either do an impression formation, so they had to make a judgment about someone's personality. So you would pair this face with this statement, and then you would say, "What do you think of this person?" Or the other condition was sequencing. So pay attention to the order that the statements were made in. So when did you see this statement versus that statement? And it turns out that a region in the prefrontal cortex, the dorsomedial prefrontal cortex here, was very highly activated to the condition where people had to form impressions versus when they had to see the same stimuli, but they had to do a slightly different task, where they had to only look at the sequence of the order that the statements were made in. So this region seems to be involved with judging someone else, so perceiving someone else.